Welcome to our Caribbean and African Targeted Health Improvement Program, CATHIP Health Hour. The Caribbean and African Health Network, CARN, along with its national partners, are incredibly pleased to continue to bring to you targeted health and well-being education delivered by Caribbean and African doctors. These health hours are all about empowering, educating, and giving space to Black people so our communities can look after themselves better. Every Saturday, our Black GPs or consultants present on those health and well-being topics that affect you, your family members, and friends. Some weeks will vary and will include other panel members such as pharmacists, specialist nurses, and faith leaders. Our health hours cover a range of topics and include mental health, heart health, women's health, reproductive and sexual health issues, men's health, respiratory problems, cancer, sickle cell, and many more. We have not forgotten to include within our health hours the many societal, cultural, religious, and racial challenges that can go hand in hand with health problems and influence how we should respond to meet health and well-being needs. The sessions are designed for you, and we want you to use the time to listen, learn, share your experiences, and ask questions to our Black doctors. During every session, we will gather your feedback so we can continue to respond to the needs of our Black community. To request any particular topic, please email health@carn.org.uk. We encourage you to invite others to our health hour sessions. Spread the word in our community.
Hi. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all well on this not so sunny day. I hope the sun's going to come back. My name's June Green, and I work for Carn as a health practitioner, former nurse and midwife. Well, I think once a nurse, always a nurse. And I have the great honor and privilege of introducing our guest this morning, and it's Dr. Lizzie. And she knew from a very young age that she wanted to become a doctor and began medical school at 17. Wow. Since graduating from the University of Nottingham, she's worked in hospitals around Yorkshire, Cambridge, and London, and she's currently specialising in emergency medicine, dedicating her career to caring for some of the most critically unwell patients in hospital. So you're based in London, Dr. Lizzie Sayode, and welcome. Over to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Carn, and to everybody who's watching online. It's a real pleasure to be here. Today, I'm going to be talking about elderly care and how we can all age gracefully. So I have worked in elderly care wards. I have spent time in the stroke wards with rehab, and getting older is something that affects all of us. So, even if you are still young, we're going to be getting older, and you might even be involved with caring responsibilities for elderly relatives, elderly friends. So this is a topic that affects everyone. So in this session, we'll be having a look at a little bit about what is aging, how we can support aging, and also some practicalities for looking after yourself and other people when they are elderly in the healthcare system. So I want this presentation to cause a lot of reflection for all of us. So I'm just going to give us about a minute to think over some of these questions, and feel free to share them as well share them. So I'll just read out the questions. Where do you want to live when you're retired? When you imagine yourself at the grand age of 85, what comes to mind? Does our society value older people? And what scares you about getting older?
Did you want people to mute or put it in the chat box? How did you want them to respond?
Yeah, they can put it in the chat box if there's anything that comes through with some of these questions.
Okay. I'll just say off off the top of my head because I'm in that category. I'm not 85 yet, but I'm hoping to get there. I think that it's we are seen. I think society does kind of forget about older people sometimes, and but not only that, I think we see ourselves as less when we're older, especially if you've been part of a workforce, say like the NHS, and then suddenly you're not working. So I think it's important that it's a personal attitude that you decide I'm still going to be as vibrant and do what I need to do, what I want to do, get up and go every morning. That's just my opinion. Okay. Somebody said they want to live in a warm place when they're older.
Yes.
Yeah. And someone said old age is scary. It's a huge transformation when your body begins to fail. Yeah, young people can think that.
So I've got a quote from the Bible, and this is a blessing. And it says, "May the Lord bless you from Zion all the days of your life. May you see the prosperity of Jerusalem, and may you live to see your children's children." So there can be a lot of achievement with getting to an older age. And if you have lived life well, hopefully with older age comes more wisdom, more laughter, more family members, more community. But obviously that's not the same for everyone. And getting older can be scary. It's not just the way that your body changes and you won't look the same. Some people are very, very worried about even things like wrinkles, and we have a whole industry with aesthetics and Botox and fillers about making sure or trying to prevent people from looking old. But aging can also be beautiful. I want to motivate all of us a little bit as well. So there's a couple of clips about older people doing extraordinary things.
Dr. Lizzie, please do share your screen so we can see your presentation. We can't see it at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me try and connect that. Okay, so here's that video for some motivation.
Well, as thousands of athletes are competing in Rio, today more than 200 local athletes competed in what's the start of the Michigan Senior Olympics.
This is pretty cool. One of the competitors born more than 100 years ago. Yeah, you heard me. These athletes competed in track and field events at Oakland University. The Michigan Games serve as a qualifier for the 2017 National.
Well, as thousands of athletes are competing in Rio, today more than 200 local athletes competed in what's
Bing, bing, bing.
So this is a video from the Senior Olympics. It is a sporting event which is open to people over 50 years old. And here we have a 101-year-old who is able to participate with a lot of enthusiasm.
I'm up to 100 push-ups right now. And the secret to push-ups is bing, 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 bing. You know, you have to do them fast.
And he's talking about push-ups too. So I think there's something which is very inspiring about that. If a 101-year-old can get out and do some running, maybe there's a challenge for all of us there. And here's another one.
At least 3 laps. I was born in September 28, 1920. Never thought I would bypass my grandfather. 96, I said, that's a long time. And here I am, 99. Try to stay active, keep the body active.
He's dedicated. He's here when it's cold, when it's hot, when it's raining, when most of us don't want to get up and come work out.
I asked them one time if could they open up at 7, but they said no, the government won't let them do it.
And you know, every now and then we'll have somebody that's new that has met him, and they'll come up, did you know that man's 99 and he's killing it in the fitness room.
I can be at home, and if I haven't exercised, I say I'm going to put it off until tomorrow. that little voice will come and say, you get out of here and go exercise. I don't know where the voice is coming from, but that's what I hear something, but it's not vocal.
So this is not going to be all of us at these grand ages, but I think it's wonderful to be able to see that that can be the future for some of us, if it's what we want.
At least.
But not everybody wants to be competing in sporting events when they're in their 80s, 90s, 100s. You know, not all of us want to be part of sporting events now. And maybe your idea of being older and retirement is being surrounded by family, maybe taking a bit of a slower lifestyle. So retirement age starts in the UK at 66, and the government's trying to increase that. So, you know, it's going up to 68 in a few years. And it is likely that they'll be pushing it 70, potentially 70 plus. But as part of normal aging, the body is wearing down, it is getting older. There's the stress that we've accumulated over our lives, which is affecting our enzymes and our proteins. And as part of that, as part of normal aging, you will see decreases in your ability to do things, in your ability to function. What is commonly affected is things like your hearing, your vision, and your mental capacity. And that means that when you're thinking about things, when you're trying to learn new things and adapt, it is very normal for there to be a slowness to that. People often will describe it, they're not as sharp as they used to be. What I do want to say, though, is especially with mental capacity, there's a very big difference between the natural slowing down that comes with age and something like dementia or Alzheimer's. So when I describe it, one way is you might say, where have I put my keys? Oh gosh, I'm not sure where I left them. A temporary bit of confusion, forgetfulness. And that's something that happens to all of us. And to be honest, a lot of younger people as well. If you can't remember what year it is, that's something very different. You know, if you say, oh, the 1980s, or you're looking at someone and you think that, oh, you've got so old. Oh, last time I saw you, you look like a 25-year-old. Why are you 40? Or the confusion, that's a disease. And that's different. That's not part of normal aging. So when it comes to things like hearing and vision, the easiest thing that you can do to try and maintain health with that is to have regular checkups. The numbers of people who don't even want to get things diagnosed or checked out could be really difficult to appreciate sometimes, especially when there can be solutions. With hearings, there are implants and hearing aids that can be used, and they make a massive difference. One of the problems with getting older is that people will suffer with reduced interaction with their friends and with their society. If you can't hear, then you can't respond, and it's easier to be forgotten because you just miss out on communication and conversation. So especially if you know an older person, it is vital to make sure that even the basics, that their hearing is checked out and their vision is checked out. So when we think about lifestyle, what we all should be doing is making sure that we exercise. And we saw those people running and lifting weights. That's start there, you know, don't be sedentary, especially if you have an office job. Make sure that you're walking, make sure that you're trying to do some sort of physical activity. It doesn't need to be pumping weights, going to the gym, whether it's swimming, whether it's some sort of dancing, whether it's even doing something like hula hoops. Just make sure that you're active. Nutrition is very important as well. As much as possible, having a varied diet, which includes vegetables, includes fruits, nuts and beans, having different sorts of carbohydrates, rice in proportions with bread, but also beans. So you want to be having a variety of foods, and also things which are not heavily laden in oil. Depending on what sort of styles of cooking that you like, there might be ways to still make it culturally appropriate for you and your taste. But what you can do is you can reduce the oil, you'll reduce the salt, you'll add more spices and pepper. Smoking, hopefully everyone's got the message by now, as much as possible. Don't smoke. And if you are a smoker, then it is something which it does reduce life expectancy. It does lead to greater chances of developing cancers. And there's a lot of help which can be given to help to reduce smoking and to stop smoking completely. As well, the alcohol, you know, they say everything in moderation. Try and take alcohol-free days, definitely, and try and minimize your alcohol as much as possible. So I want to describe some of the roles that can be involved with supporting older people. These are abbreviations that you might be familiar with if you've worked in the NHS or you've been involved with medical care. You've got things like OT, which stands for an occupational therapist, and they can help to make assessments around the house. They can help with making sure that people can get into things like the bathroom properly. So as people are getting older, it can be very helpful to get them on hand. They can come out to people's their accommodation, to their houses, and to try and suggest ways that things can be changed to make things better for an older person. Physiotherapists can give guidance about physical activity and also can make sure that you have appropriate strength in your arms and your legs to continue living. Dietitians can be really helpful. Sometimes as people get older, they're less likely to take in sufficient calories and nutrition. There are different sorts of high energy drinks that can be given, but also people sometimes, if they're losing things like their teeth, might struggle with some foods. So it could be helpful to get a dietitian who can have a look at what options might help. The GPs as well are very involved with elderly patients and their care, so they'll look at things like their medication and health checkups. I've included social workers as well, because depending on who an elderly person is and their accommodation, it might be appropriate to get some sort of help with their living circumstances. Obviously, we know that your plans for retirement and for being older depend heavily on finances. And so social workers can be a great start for seeing what is possible and what help is out there. Often the point of accessing a lot of these healthcare professionals is through the GP. So I just want everybody to take some time now and to look at this diagram. You can answer in the chat box and say, is this a safe environment? Hopefully yes or no, hopefully it'll be clear. But what are the problems with this environment for someone who might be older? So I'll give you about a minute and a half for this. Okay. What is coming through the chat? What's wrong with this setting?
Can we see the picture again?
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry. Sorry. Okay, here it is. Take about half a minute more.
That's okay. But the main things that have come through on the chat has been people have said trip hazards, too many trip hazards. And I myself noticed things like no banisters on the stairs, and wires and obstructions on the floor.
All of that is exactly right. So we've got a rug there which is not secured down. You can see the corner starting to turn. We've got hot coffee, which is boiling, and it's right at the edge of the table. And we've got a medication cabinet, which is open, and we've got wires everywhere. There's animals. I see a cat. There's things up on the stairs as well. And I'm just looking at this person coming down the stairs. That might be someone actually to support this older person. And I'm sure they're trying their best. But an environment like this is more likely going to cause some sort of harm to that older person. And the sort of harm they'll cause is things like falls. Unfortunately, working in A&E, falls and elderly falls is something that I see routinely. And the harm of it can be extremely damaging. We see a lot of hip fractures which come because people have fallen over, tripped over something. And when people are older and they're admitted into hospital, we know that there's greater chances of things like becoming confused and picking up other sorts of problems as well along the journey. If we just go back to this photo as well, there's, I think, a role for us as individuals when we're planning and thinking about getting older, saying, well, what is an appropriate living situation for ourselves, for me? What do I need my space to look like to make sure that I am able to move around confidently and comfortably? One of the things as well with falls that we see with elderly people is that actually, you know, after you've got recovered from that, if you have needed a hip operation and you started your physiotherapy, there's often a loss of confidence that can come with having a situation like that. And one of the main problems with something like a loss of confidence is people want to stop doing it. Imagine if you've fallen because you were going up and down the stairs. Sometimes when people develop a fear of going up and down the stairs, and they'll start to adjust. They'll say, oh, let me just stay downstairs, or I'll just stay in my chair. I don't want to fall again. And so the big thing we can do is try and make sure this fall doesn't happen in the first place, but then as well, just making sure if you are a family member or a friend of someone who has been through in a situation or circumstance like that, is that encouragement to say, let's try and get you back to what you were doing before as much as possible. One of the things that also really makes me, sometimes it's a bit of a chuckle, that I find quite interesting, is how many different sorts of aids there are to be able to do things. So sometimes people think, oh, either I can walk and get about and be independent, or I can't do anything and I'm just going to stay in my chair all day. There are a variety of tools and adjustments that can be made for people to try and maintain as much independence as possible. You might see someone walking with one stick, and that will just be a little bit of support. And then they might go on to even using 2 sticks. They can use frames. There are different sorts of trolleys. And even if someone has to be in a wheelchair to get out and about, I think it's really good to have an awareness that there are different forms of support out there. You might not know what all these tools are or how they work, but what you can do is talk to someone like a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist, which might come through the GP, to become more aware of what's required. I've got a photo of some forks and knives and some cutlery, which have been made for people who have got arthritic joints. So when you've got something like arthritis, you can have a lot of joint pain and swelling, and you might not be able to use a normal sized fork and knife. Even just by having larger handles, then it means that someone can continue to eat their meals independently. I think as well, sometimes when you're looking after someone who's older, the temptation is to do everything for them. And so it might be that you want to help support them with putting their clothes on and off, you want to support them all the time walking up the stairs. It's like, oh, I can cut your food for you. As much as possible, for elderly people, you want to support them in maintaining their own independence. So that means, okay, let's give you the tools so you can cut your own fork and knife. Of course, if someone's in distress, or it's, it's not going to be appropriate for everyone, there'll be times to intervene. But even if someone is very slow, even if it takes them a long time, let them maintain that ability. So if you don't use it, you lose it. So you want to encourage people to be able to get out, go out as much as possible, even if they're using those aids. I think sometimes a part of it can be almost like an insecurity or even a pride that you don't want to seem reliant on others or using these tools. It is much better to use a tool and be part of the world rather than making your world smaller and smaller. And I think that can be a reflection for us as individuals. When it comes to healthcare and being an older person, things can often become a lot more complicated. And that's because you might have more long-term conditions. You might start having arthritis, which comes around your 60s, and then you might develop issues with your blood pressure. And then as you get older, there might be something like a mini stroke. And so often you'll find that people have more and more conditions, and they also have more and more medications. These are some of the questions that is really helpful to know if you're going to be an older person in hospital or if you're supporting an older person. Can I just see with thumbs up, does everyone know this information for themselves? You know, if I asked you, okay, so why are you taking this medication? Are you able to say with confidence why you're taking every medication? Or is it sometimes the doctor told me, it was prescribed for me? You know, is there anything that's coming through the chat?
Someone said that they trust their GP.
Okay.
And we've got a couple of thumbs up.
Good.
No, I think from my experience working in the community, there's a lot of people who just do accept things from the GPs, and the GP will go and give them another tablet and they'll just take it and not actually ask about it, because there seems to be, especially in the older generation, in my generation, there seems to be this acceptance of that the doctor's right and they know what they're saying, and so they don't tend to question authority just from a cultural perspective. And so sometimes they will just accept them and not even know what they are and just keep taking them, even though they're supposed to not take others. So sometimes pharmacists will advise them not to take that as well. But it's just something I think people need to be more able to do, is question, what's this for? And I don't think people always do that.
Yeah, definitely. In the ideal world, you would have a great relationship with your GP. You'll know who they are, they'll know who you are, and they'll be familiar with your medical background and also maybe some of your family members. Unfortunately, that model of such closeness between you and your GP is something which is less and less found. It often doesn't happen like that for people anymore. Lots of people, GPs can change, and lots of GPs work as almost locum, so they'll come and spend a little bit of time. So you might not be seeing the same person. They're only accessing your notes or have a snapshot, but they might not know your full history. And so on an individual basis, on a one-on-one encounter, it is likely they'll be able to, do a quick summary, have a look at what's happening with you and make an appropriate decision. But you cannot rely on the GP having that full history. Also, when you go to a hospital, sometimes the information will not be shared. And so they'll come and ask you, and so say, we don't know anything about you. Can you tell us that? And so it can be difficult. There's often a bit of a challenge when the individual won't know much about their healthcare, and the GP has been sorting it all out, but we don't have access to all of those notes. It might be as simple as you're on holiday somewhere else, an accident happens, you need to go to an A&E, and then it's like, oh gosh, we're starting from scratch. So if you can even write down these things, have it saved somewhere, it might be in your diary, which you keep around with you, often, it can be on your phone, and even things like the NHS app, now it's trying to collate more information for people. to say, what medications are you taking? What are they for? Have you been taking them? What I've also put is what is the maximum level of care? And that is something which can be much more important for our much older and frailer people. I'll talk about that a bit more later. I just want to check who is familiar with the term that having a lasting power of attorney, and that's for health specifically. Are there any thumbs ups? Okay. So an LPA, or giving someone a lasting power of attorney, is about saying, if I cannot make a decision for myself, this is a person who I trust to help make a decision on my behalf, who I think will consider who I am, and who will support me in making the best decision. Not next of kin is something which people think means someone can have, can make a decision on their behalf. It's not quite the case. The legal framework that you want to use, especially as you become more frail and you have a more interaction with the hospitals and healthcare, is to make sure that you have a lasting power of attorney. The medical team will always try and act in your best interests, but especially when they don't know you, they're not always going to be aware of your preferences. And so if you can, when you have the ability to think through things and make a decision for yourself, it's best to have this in place. So if you say you get sick for a period of time and you have an infection, you're quite confused, that's when they would use something like the lasting power of attorney. And then if you got better, then that lasting power of attorney, they lose their ability to be your decision maker. So sometimes it will be something temporary. But if you're diagnosed with something like dementia and actually you're becoming more and more confused and it's not going to improve, then that lasting power of attorney will have a more permanent role. It's separate for finance and for health. So even if you've got someone who's got lasting power of attorney for your financial needs and sorting out things with the bank, they wouldn't have that power over your healthcare. So some examples would be, okay, well, we're now trying to think about whether they want to go to a care home or they need to live in a particular area, or whether they should have an operation or not. And the individual can't make that decision for themselves. That's when we'll want the lasting power of attorney for their health needs to speak on their behalf. You can sort this out for free through the government links. Some people would want to get some legal advice about it, but it's not necessary at all. It's all about choice for you as your choice, the individual. So it shouldn't be seen as a scary thing, especially when it comes to elderly relatives. I think it can be really difficult to have these conversations. If you are having that discussion with, say, a parent, I think it's good to say, this is not about making the choice right now for you. You can make that choice. And actually your choice can be to give that, to allow me to make those choices for you when you can't. So the first step would always be asking that individual, what do you want? And when that person is unable to say what they want, that's when their nominated person can share on their behalf. And so if you're actually a well person, a healthy person, as you're getting older, then it could be really important. It can be helpful for you to think about who your lasting power of attorney, who you'd want them to be, whether that's a friend, whether it's a family member, a child, or someone else. We touched upon this very briefly as well when thinking about the number of conditions and the number of medications that you're on. As people get older, often they will require more medications. You know, you start off with 2 for your blood pressure, and then 1 for your heart, and then Ron's had a mini stroke, and then before you know it, you'll have people on 8, 10, 15 medications every single day. If that's the case with you, or you're aware of someone where they're on multiple medications, it can be really helpful to ask for a pharmaceutical review, a medication review. Sometimes that's done by pharmacists. Often the point will be through the GP. And it's about how can we rationalize, or how can we better make sense of the medication. Some medications work over a number of years, or they reduce your chance of having a heart attack over 5 or 10 years. If you are dealing with a relative who is 98 years old and actually no one's expecting them to live 5 years, that might not be a medication that they need. Sometimes you'll find people on medication for their blood pressure, and then they're on medications to raise their blood pressure. So sometimes medication for blood pressure that's too high, and then there are also medications for blood pressure that's too low. And it's just because they've been added, and each time there's a problem, they add some more. So having every few years, if you're noticing you're on lots of medications, or you know someone who is, just asking for them to be seen in a total package and say, are there any that it's actually appropriate to stop, or it's not worth it? And so here I'm going to talk a little bit about escalation plans. And I think this can be a very difficult topic for individuals and their family members. This is a picture of something of an intensive care space. There's not always going to be like this, but often there will be a few machines around. People will often have something like a catheter inside, and that's monitoring their urine. You might be on a ventilator, which helps with things like to do with your breathing, lots of monitors. And as we become older and more frail, the things that we should start to think about is, how much intervention do we want? And what are we trying to achieve? I think there can be a fear sometimes that if you go into hospital and they see you're a much older person, then they're not going to do everything that they can to save you. I think sometimes it's not a case that everything should be done. If we're not expecting someone to survive, and we're not expecting someone to survive well, or in fact, actually their preference is not to survive and not be able to talk or not be able to walk, sometimes it's better not to do something. I'd say generally it's always appropriate to give things like pain relief. And if anyone's in distress, there's medications that can be helped for that. But not everyone should be going through an operation. I'll try and make this a bit simpler. Somebody might have a bit of a dodgy hip, and that dodgy hip stops them from being able to go for a run. And it might be an option to say, okay, should we replace your hip? We can do a hip replacement. It'll take about 6 weeks for you to recover. And then after that, you should be able to get back to running. If you love running at 50, you might say, oh, actually, that sounds quite good. I don't want to give up running yet. I like going for a jog. 6 weeks, okay. Obviously, crutches for a bit, it's not great. It'll be quite painful. But I can see, but the next summer, in a year's time, I should be back to running and do what I want to do. Maybe, though, you're already 75, and they said, well, your hip is a bit dodgy. We could offer you a hip replacement so you can get back to running. And you might just, I don't really run anymore. Or I don't really want to run. And then when we describe 6 weeks and there'll be pain and you have to do physiotherapy, you might really make that decision for yourself. Say, actually, it doesn't seem worth it for me. There's a level where this is going to be very, it's going to be individual, where what's appropriate for one person is not going to be what's appropriate for everyone. And actually, some people say, well, I'm comfortable. Yes, I might not be able to do everything. I might not be able to jump about and to run for the bus. But at this stage of my life, I'm not going to miss that. Likewise, being admitted into intensive care, what happens in intensive care can have a level of trauma, and it can be difficult to recover from that. And it might be that there's a lot of work required afterwards to make sure that person is well enough to even go home. And sometimes doctors and the team at the hospitals will say, even if we take you there, we don't think this person is ever going to be able to leave hospital and go home again. And so let's not do that to them. Let's not inflict that on them. Sometimes it's a case they'll be able to have that chat with you as an individual. So it's helpful if you've thought about these things before. Other times, though, it's always a bit of a difficulty when you speak to a family member because the individual, the patient, can't say anything for themselves. And they say, I don't know. I don't have any clue what this person would want. So I think it should always be discussion points. And it's not really necessarily just about death or dying. It's not about trying to save resources. It's about, can we make this person well enough to live the life that they would like to live? Medicines can do more and more. We can put people on ventilators. We can keep them going with machines. We can hoist them, so we'll have people who are bedbound and we're using contraptions to lift them and turn them into bed. But you also have to think, is that the life that I would want? And for some people, they'll say, oh, it's not so bad. As long as if I can recognize my family members and loved ones, I'll still be happy. Other people say, actually, I'm such an independent person. I love to be able to wash myself, look after my own care needs. If I need someone to do that for me, no, I'd rather not. So I think it's, especially as you notice yourself becoming more frail, it's good to have an awareness to think about. And if you can, write down what level of living is acceptable for me. So we're not just putting more wire and tubes and just keep you alive, especially in a condition that you wouldn't want. This is slightly relevant with the topic of resuscitation as well. Sometimes you might hear a term DNAR, do not attempt resuscitation. That doesn't mean that the medical team have given up on you. It doesn't mean that they're leaving you to die or they're not treating you. But what it does mean is that if your heart then stopped, they wouldn't be doing chest compressions to try and get the heart beating again. Even if someone has a do not attempt resuscitation form signed, they can still have oxygen, they can still have antibiotics, they can still have fluids. There's still a lot of treatment that can be given before it comes to that situation. But resuscitation and chest compressions doesn't even always work for young people. Sometimes there can be still a lot of damage to the brains, and so they're not going to return to living independently. And so even if that's for young people, imagine what it's like for people who are much, much older. Sometimes you can say, oh, but they survived the initial chest compressions, yes, but what happens afterwards can be very traumatic still. And actually, they may never return to how they were before. So I think you should think about it from a loving perspective. I have a lot of conversations with families about this matter, and it's saying, you love this person. You want them to not be in pain, not be distressed. And sometimes you can see that interaction with how they either talk about the individual. There's clearly love there. So what do you think is the most loving thing for them? What do you think their own wishes would be? And so sometimes actually the best and most caring and loving decision is not to do everything, but it's maybe try some antibiotic, give a little bit of time. Yeah.
All right, Dr. Lizzie, so about 5 minutes more. Okay.
Just want to end by community as well. So just for all of us, we should be thinking about who our community are, who's in our family, who's our friends, who can we rely on, and who relies on us. One of the things that can be scary and challenging about getting older is that you may find it difficult to make new friends and form new relationships. But also, as people get older and die, you may be losing some of your community. One of the best ways to maintain health, and especially for your mental health, is to maintain a community around you. And so that starts from young. It's not often then that you'll get a 90-year-old person who suddenly now is making lots of new friends. It's just to have that awareness as you're getting older, as you're going through life. It's who are the people around me? And if you've only got 2 best friends, does it make sense for you to try and widen that network just in something happens to them? And just think about, so how can we make new friends, whether that's through religion and church groups, and there's different social networks. How do we keep in touch with people? Obviously, technology has made it a lot easier for us to maintain contact with people. And so even if you can't go out to see friends, someone's becoming more frail, just being able to catch up with them over the phone can be a really good place to start. Just want to close just sharing a couple of resources. So the University of Third Age, that's about skills and networking for people who are retired. They do lots of activities and learning. And so that can be, if there's a group local to you, a really good place to start if you're looking for more things to do. Age UK as well is a fantastic charity in the UK which support older people. It gives a lot of information about caring for older people and information about the finances and what other supports is out there. So we can end there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful. We've got a few questions for you. Dr. Lizzie, someone said, my mum says cutting sugar is the key to aging well, but how much is too much?
So you don't need to cut out anything completely. And also there's a balance of enjoying your life. If you're not going to eat meat and you're not going to have any sugar and you're not going to do, actually your life will become very, very small and miserable. If you want to live forever and not have sugar, for me, I'd rather have a little bit of sugar. It's about having things in moderation. Don't be having multiple cans of Coke every day. If you're having some fizzy drinks, once a week, every so often as a rare treat for yourself, that's okay. Have a chocolate bar, not every day like I used to, but as a special occasion.
And someone said, does stress really age you faster? And someone said, my job's crazy.
Oh gosh. Stress can have a horrific effect on the body, and people will react to stress in different ways. Part of it is, yes, it can affect your cells, it can affect your mental health. All those things can make the aging process accelerate, but not everyone will go down that route. And so if you are in a very, very stressful job, I think it's important to get some help with thinking about how you can make it less stressful. Money is really, really important as well, but money is not worth your mental health. And so there needs to be a balance. Sometimes that will be through the GP, sometimes that'll be through a career coach, sometimes it'll be friends and family who can say, how can we create a strategy so that we are not less as stressed.
Thank you. Someone's asking a question to me saying they relate so much to the feeling of emptiness when you retire. Who am I? But I don't think they got my message. I don't think it's the question of the emptiness. It will be different stepping off that, but I think it's also important what you said before about planning. I'll just say a little bit now about it because I've been asked to speak. Because they said on a personal experience, lived experience, it means I'm old, but it is about what you're going to do next. And I think sometimes when you get to a certain age, there's a part of you that wants you can slow down, but then just go in a different direction. Because I believe aging is a privilege, and so aging with grace is a necessity to how we live every day, because it's respecting all the years of wisdom, of experience, all the things that we've learned and we've been given, and it's a chance really to slow down and stop and give back. Some people, we will have to work till we're older, and there's nothing wrong with that, depending on what you're doing. Coming from working in the NHS, I retired from the NHS, and now I'm working for Khan. I'm not saying it's less stress, but it's a different kind of stress that makes life more manageable. Because I think I'm very blessed. I am very blessed. I've got a very supportive workforce, and the love and respect I feel every day makes it easier to go to work. I lost my mum. My mum was age 49 when she died. And it's something as I'm getting older that I think about all the time. And as I spoke to my daughters yesterday, because I was thinking about this topic about aging, and I was talking to my eldest daughter about some of the things that I was thinking about aging, and she said, "Who's been telling you you're old?" And I said, "Nobody. I'm going to talk about it." She says, "Oh, I thought I'd have to go and fight somebody." And I said to her, "But it's to me, it's not a big deal. I'm here." I'm here at my age. And then my younger daughter, the one after her, said to me yesterday, what does it feel like? And I said to her, I actually forget that I'm this age. And my mind, I'm still thinking when I was in my 30s and I was 40s, and I still think the same way about things. Or you look back and think, that was stupid, and how you can and how not to do it and maybe make better choices. And it does take longer for you to do things, but you don't give up. You just give yourself that time to take a bit longer. At one time, I was able to get 3 or 4 children up, dressed, washed, fed, out the house in an hour. It takes me an hour on my own to get ready now. But you know what? I accept that. And you mentioned before about the hip operation. I had hip surgery a couple of years ago, and I was the pain that I was in for the couple of years before, it was absolutely, it was horrendous. I can't even, some nights I couldn't even go to bed because I couldn't sit down, lie down. There was no position. So some nights I would sit up all night in the chair. So when I had the chance to do the hip surgery, to get my surgery, I was happy. And there was people were giving you, was trying to scare you, saying they don't put you to sleep, this and that. And of course you have a spinal, but as soon as I had the anesthetic myself, I was smiling, and the surgeon, everybody looked at me and said, what you smiling for? And I said, because I'm never going to have that pain again. And that was it. Your mind is an amazing thing. And I didn't, even the rehab, I know I was blessed and I was lucky, but I think a lot of what we do is how we do it, how we approach things, how we decide we're going to do this. This isn't going to happen to me. Because there are people who still say, "Oh, I'm in pain and this and that," and there are people my age. I forget them my age because they appear so much older. And you do. Somebody said before, it's something that you start when you're younger. It's the attitude that you and it's about gratitude that you start to. I wake up every day and I think, guess what? I'm here, and I'm able to get out of bed because when my hip was bad, it took me about 10 minutes to get out of bed. So it is about that. It's about looking after yourself. And when you talked about the MDT, you didn't include the dentist. That's important too. Look after all of yourself. Just after you're looking after your skin, and plan what you're going to do for retirement. Think about overlapping what you're going to do next. What's this, the third age, as you call it? The things that you weren't able to do. I'm not saying going out and buying sports car because you see a lot of old people doing that, but it's the things that you never had time to do before. You want to write, do you want to even go and see your children? Because with my parents and grandparents, we always went to see them. But if you're still mobile enough, when you're 66, you get your free pass on the buses and the tram. I've not used them much before, but I'm gonna take advantage of that when I get it. So it doesn't have to be scary. It's your attitude. And if you've done the work when you're younger, looked after your health, taken care, and gone into the habit of doing things, then you still work at it. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I still have to work at it every day. But at least it's nice to get up and get out and look at things and get fascinated and see how the younger generation, that's what keeps you young, keeps your mind young. See how they look at things. And sometimes even at music, dancing, and they're coming with songs and they're saying, how do you know that song? I'm like, because it was out 20 years ago. So that's my attitude, when it comes to age. And I know it's a personal one, but I think that to age gracefully is a privilege. And thank you very much for the things that you said today. And you've given us a lot to think about. But it doesn't, and I also think it's something that we should be looking forward to because it's better than the alternative. I know that's a bit glib, but it is to be here at this age. Like I said, I've seen so many young people not have the chance to be here. So embrace it. And I think it's really important that we do enjoy our lives as best we can. Thank you so much. It's been very positive. Somebody was saying, what age would you recommend that you make such plans? Like any age, any age you should start thinking about it. Just, I'm not saying dwell on it. Also, I mean, my dad used to sit and watch the news all the time and then worry about things. Be aware of what's going on, but look at your world, look outside the window and things like that. And I'm not one of those people who just, who are unrealistic. You do what you can. As you said before, with your limitation, push yourself a bit more, walk a bit more, go out and talk a bit more, keep your mind active. And even when you're older, if you haven't got family around you, volunteer for things. I'm looking at things like helping to teach children to read and things like that. So going to my granddaughter's school and helping with the reading. I did say to her, I was thinking of doing that. And she said, that'd be lovely. And I said, would you enjoy that? She said, yeah, because you get to go out of school early if your grandparents come in. So thank you. Thank you all for listening. And thank you very much, Dr. Lizzie. Okay. So I think, are there any quick questions before we get Sola to speak? I mean, I think I've done that. Somebody's saying it's sad to think about, but young people earning large incomes from social media. Plan. If you're, make sure you've got your pension. I know it sounds, when you're young and people talk about pensions, you just think, that's got nothing to do with me, but it has. If you start planning from your younger, then you just transition into that. So thank you very much. Okay, I'm handing over to Chola now, and he's going to end the show. And thank you again. Thank you so much.
Hello. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yeah, we can hear you now and we can see the
Okay,
screen.
great.
Thank you, Charlotte. Over to you.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Lizzie and June, for such an inspiring session. I think it really got us thinking about so many things, and I really just want to say, thank you for also, sharing this knowledge with the younger folks as well, because it allows us to sort of like think ahead as well, and this is sort of like important things for us to really think about as well. So I really just want to say thank you. I've learned a lot. I'm sure everybody has learned a lot as well. So great. I'm just going to say we run our health hour every week, and we're going to be having another one next week with a brilliant doctor, just like we've had Dr. Lizzie as well today. So please, to register, just send an email to info@can.org.uk, so you might be able to join us again next week. Health hour runs every week, every Saturday from 11 to 12:15. Okay, great. So have you recently experienced loss, or you're going through, or you're dealing with grief? Can runs a bereavement support group, and it's a free online bereavement session for families and individuals navigating grief. The first session is on the 5th of May from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. So please, if you might love to sort of like join this bereavement support group, you can register by emailing rosalyn@can.org.uk. That's ROSALYN@can.org.uk. Or you can just scan the QR code that is on your screen at this time. Africa Day. So Can is hosting Africa Day to celebrate 80 years of the 5th Pan-African Congress in Manchester. And that's going to be happening on the 22nd of May, 2025 at the University of Greater Manchester. It used to be called University of Bolton, but it's called the University of Greater Manchester now. And it's free entry, so please scan the QR code to register. And if you're interested in showcasing your business with a stall, I'm going to be showing the next slide of how you might be able to do that. But everybody is welcome to attend this event. We'll be celebrating, the theme of the event is accelerating business growth and technology in Africa. Right, if you want to showcase your business, if you're an entrepreneur or business owner with products or services to showcase, then we have opportunities for you to sort of like showcase a store. All you'd have to do is please scan the QR code or email info@can.org.uk to see how you might be able to get involved. It's a platform to promote your brand, build valuable connections, and reach a new audience. Please, please, please do not miss these unique opportunities. We're excited to see you on the 22nd of May. University of Greater Manchester in Bolton. Awards. Everybody knows the importance of awards. I'm pretty sure every one of us at some point here, when we've been given awards in the past, it made us feel very, very ecstatic. I love awards bigly. And then Can is hosting the Black Healthcare Awards on the 12th of June to spotlight the brilliance of Black professionals in health and care. I mean, look at the amazing information that Dr. Lizzie just shared with us today. We certainly want to sort of like, give an award, and all of the other professionals working in working in health and care as well, for some of the brilliant thing that they've been doing. So please, tickets are available now. You can register at portal.can.org/Black Health Awards. Apologies. Or you can just scan the QR code that you see on the screen. If any of the information that I'm speaking about today, you need further information about it, please just email info@can.org.uk, and whatever it is, whatever further information that you might need, will be communicated to you via that inbox. Black Healthcare Awards 2025. It's going to be happening in Park Plaza, Westminster Bridge in London. Thank you very much for joining us today. We really, really, really hope to see you next week. Thank you very much, Dr. Lizzie and June Green.
Welcome to our Caribbean and African Targeted Health Improvement Program, CATHIP Health Hour. The Caribbean and African Health Network, CAN, along with its national partners, are incredibly pleased to continue to bring to you targeted health and well-being education delivered by Caribbean and African doctors. These health hours are all about empowering, educating, and giving space to Black people so our communities can look after themselves better. Every Saturday, our Black GPs or consultants present on those health and well-being topics that affect you, your family members, and friends. Some weeks will vary and will include other panel members such as pharmacists, specialist nurses, and faith leaders. Our health hours cover a range of topics and include mental health, heart health, women's health, reproductive and sexual health issues, men's health, respiratory problems, cancer, sickle cell, and many more. We have not forgotten to include within our health hours the many societal, cultural, religious, and racial challenges that can go hand in hand with health problems and influence how we should respond to meet health and well-being needs. The sessions are designed for you, and we want you to use the time to listen, learn, share your experiences, and ask questions to our Black doctors. During every session, we will gather your feedback so we can continue to respond to the needs of our Black community. To request any particular topic, please email health@can.org.uk. We encourage you to invite others to our health hour sessions, spread the word in our community,